Alright, my babies. We're back, and I think after this, I'm gonna write me a schedule for next week, and at the very least, from there to see how far I'm going back and forth, how where I'm missing and where I'm actually like excited, and then adapt something to it. Why the fuck not? But I've been wanting to do this video for 3 days now. Every time I come to do it, and I go like, I don't want to do it. Until yesterday, I was reading this book, which is Building a Second Brain. So, specifically when it comes to books, man, what happens is the first time you do that, when every book kind of gives you the gist of what it's doing or the gist of what it's about. And there are self-help books, and there are like kind of like inspirational books, and there are some books that you just kind of like are have no idea what you're getting out of, but they're written so well. So this is more of a structural book. I put it in the self-help category because ultimately you're getting information from it. We could consider it knowledge, but the truth is, like, if I don't apply what I learned in this book, I read it just for the sake of reading, right? That's that kind of book. But funny enough, when I started reading it, I realized that everything he's talking about is a different structure, or if it is a different approach to the same structure that I have, because I tend to take notes, right? So I take notes of something that's interesting. I research them a bit. I have like 6, 7 copybooks, like big ones like these. And at one point, each one kind of like is deliberate for one topic, and I make it a point to fill out the entire copybook by randomly researching on random stretches of time. And so this book was kind of like is, is exactly the same vibe. It's like, how do you kind of like his methodology is called capture, organize, distill, and express, which is practically what I do, from thinking something, writing it down, considering it, writing more about it, and some of the things that I do, I kind of like write them into notes, and I have a conversation with you. So amazing. Why did I mention this book? It's because today's video is receive, perceive, and conceive. Ultimately, what I'm discussing is the mind. See, it's receive, perceive, and conceive in the mind. And this is not on the spiritual path. Well, everything is, but like this is not me being spiritual about it. This is literally you kind of like whatever question you ask, the environment is going to show you some stuff. And what you do is basically you you kind of like first thing that happens is it shows up in front of you, and what you do is you kind of like you have to be receptive to it, and then you have to basically the perception that you have and you look at it, and that perception keeps changing because the more you look at it, the more information you get, and the more intentional you are about seeing it in your environment, depending on the question, right? Because like you ask the first question, it shows up. You ask more questions after you see the first thing, and then it basically like your perception changes. And the third thing is conceive. Conceiving here, specifically from my perspective, is that perspective, right? There's a big difference between perspective and perception. No. Yeah, there's a big difference between perspective and perception. But so, from my perspective, what I'm perceiving eventually becomes the norm. It becomes a part of my environment, but an acknowledged part of my environment. And I kind of felt like just the coming back to these notes after 4 months, or yeah, 4 months of not doing them. They're looking so corny, man, so corny. And in a way, I'm kind of like being egotistical about it because when you're looking at something in a corny way is judging it. I'm trying to break that because it feels like as days pass, when you're not really expressing yourself, you're not creating that vulnerability within you that allows for more things to be approached. And keep in mind, I mentally wanted to do this. I mentally wanted to like take a step back and see what all the things that I've been trying to express and talking about, I wanted to see them in action. But seeing them in action solidifies their existence, which in the perspective, in the from a human's perspective is the ego, is me. And now that ego itself is kind of like looking at this because like, ah, it's so corny. Don't make a video. Like, that is the resistance that I'm going. But it's funny because like I was waiting for my dad yesterday, and I decided to read a chapter of this book, and that's what I normally do when I'm kind of like passing time. Although I haven't been more efficient when it comes to my afternoons as I did before. But and when I was like reading this book, he kind of pointed at the whole capture, organize, distill, and express. And that's what he talks about because you capture something, you organize it, create structure in it, and then you distill it, as in like you filter it. You filter the stuff that kind of like that connect to each other and into like bigger and bigger chunks, I guess. But we don't think of our mind from a spatial perspective. We think of our mind from a conceptual perspective. So ultimately, what you do is you see many things, and then you basically look at them and you create that relationship between you and them and within your reality. And then after that, even though they're everywhere, they become one thing that's related to everything. And that's what you keep at your core, the conception that you have. And ultimately express. Like here, this expression is basically me talking about these things, expressing them, opening them out. The reason I wanted to mention this is because it's just the minute I was reading this chapter, and they mentioned they call it code, CODE, capture, organize, distill, and express. The first thing that clicked in my head was receive, perceive, and conceive. And receive, perceive, conceive. But with him, it's basically the expression is what allows everything to come into reality. And I just laughed, and that's the video calling basically for its place in my reality. At the very least, that's how we relate to things, right? That's how we connect things together. Be like, this reminds me of something, and then suddenly that something kind of like pops up somewhere else around you, and then you go like, oh, what's going on? That effectively, this is what's going on. So let's talk about receive, perceive, and conceive. I think 4, 5, 6, 7 months ago, I had a discussion with my father where he pointed something out. It's a Hindu mythology, or just like a concept on consciousness. It's called Viti Devata Chanda, which is the knower, the knowing, and the knowledge. The idea is behind like you see something, there's you, the knower, and then the something is basically the knower, the known, and the knowing. Sorry, not the knowledge. And then ultimately, the minute you acknowledge that you're seeing something, there's a knowing. What exactly are you knowing after you look at the known and you're looking at, and the knower is looking at the knower? The idea behind the relationship, that's the triad, which I think Christianity as well discuss it from a Father, Son, and Holy Ghost perspective. Because like me, myself, and I is connected that way. The I is beyond us. The myself is kind of like the child, and or maybe the I is, yeah, whatever. I don't know. I'll maybe think about it to explain it better next time. But the idea is that the minute you receive something, then then as I said earlier, you're kind of looking at it. The minute it's there in your reality, your first action is to notice it, and then the part of you that connects with it, the part of you that notices it, is basically the part that's revealing the perception. And ultimately, once you realize how you're perceiving something, then you're conceptualizing in a certain kind of way. You're conceiving it differently. So the minute you do, what happens is whatever you're receiving changes. It looks different because the way you perceived it before is not the same. Because you conceived something out of it, you conceptualize something new out of it, and you conceptualize it through connecting it to different thoughts, different parts of you. Your character probably notices something about itself because of it. Your personality notices from something about itself because of it. Your reality kind of like changes a bit, and naturally that influences you. And any way you look at it, it's just like change has happened somewhere, and then that change trickles down to kind of like set everything on balance. And the minute you conceive it differently. What effectively you're doing is you're receiving it differently because it's still there. But now the entire reality that you have is affected by the fact that this new thing exists. And suddenly, like your perception of your entire reality has changed. And ultimately, as your perception regulates, everything you conceive is changing. And then we go back to the same thing, whatever it is you first received into your reality and whatever you get into it. So it's an interesting way of looking at this from a non-manifesty perspective. It's just like completely engaging with your reality and understanding how you maybe creating a under, engaging with a better understanding of how you interact with your reality. Yeah, but this still manifested though, because ultimately, once you notice about anything about your surroundings, it's an added bonus for you to kind of utilize and use as you adjust your reality. So there's really like all kinds of different levels where we interact with something. And I imagine the start always is with us being intentional. It's a video. Love you guys.